Today's session is titled Conquered the edTPA Task 3. We are specifically going to focus on Task 3. The past 2 days, we've deep dived into 1 and 2, and this is the final task for Task 3. The norms: be present, share your thoughts and questions in the chat box, and please have an open mind.
Good afternoon. Our goals are the same as the last couple of days, is to make sense of the format, and hopefully there you can see the pattern from task 1 and task 2, and it would be a similar pattern task 3, and then we'll get to look at some exemplars the second half of this session.
So what do you need to start? First, you need to summarize the learning for the whole class, referring to work samples from the 3 focus students to illustrate the patterns of learning. And so what that means is that you're going to rescore all of the student work for the entire class. So if it's a class of 15, you're going to take the assessment, you're going to score for 15 students. From that, you're going to be able to have an understanding of where your class is, what they can do, what they can't do, what they are struggling with, aligned to your standard. Then you're still going to choose 3 focus students depending on which edTPA version you're using. So for instance, if you're doing childhood education, it's usually 2 students. If you're doing a special education version, it's 1. Either way, you're going to have a focus student, and then you're going to analyze the pattern of learning for that particular student or groups of students against what the whole class could do. The other thing is that you are going to have to provide some feedback, work samples. So you're also going to have to make sure that you collect some work samples for your focus students, and you are also making sure that you have feedback. And so this feedback, depending on the student's ages and ability, could be written feedback, it could be audio, or it could be video. The third thing you have to make sure you do is that you're analyzing the student's language use. Remember, we talked about this in task 1. Is it compare and contrast? Is it analyze? But you have to come back to that language use. Regardless of which subject of edTPA you're doing, they always want to make sure there's a literacy element that's happening in your class. So you also have to make sure and think about the fact that while you are doing this, especially when you start to implement and you're teaching your class for task 2, where in that experience are students going to have a chance to focus on the language use? Where are you building it in to make sure that you have enough evidence to talk about it in task 3? And lastly, you want to be able to analyze the evidence of student learning and plan for next steps. So yes, we have the evidence. I gave you the feedback, but what happens next? Do you go on to the next unit? Do you do a reteach? So all of those things come into play for task 3.
You can describe it by using a chart or a table or a narrative. We typically like to use charts and tables because they're easy to see. Question 2, how feedback to students address strengths and areas of growth. So this 2A is how are you giving the feedback, and 2B is really how are students going to understand the feedback. Question 3, how does the evidence show the understanding of the chosen language, function, and demands? So think about the choices of assessment you have, and that piece needs to be evident in what you're submitting. So you may have, 2 or 3 pieces of potential assessments you can use that you're using throughout your lessons, but which one has clear evidence that the students are using language? And lastly, you make your analysis, both to the successes and the parts where the students weren't as successful. What are the next steps addressing both? And why are those the best next steps? So here are the pieces that you are submitting. Student work for 3 focus students. Okay, so you're going to submit the actual work for 3 students. We say, it could be any 3, But some things to think about is have some variety in levels, high, middle, and low. Also include one of the students you may have mentioned as a potential on the list as an L, or a student with disabilities as one of the focus students. Evidence of feedback, so written or recorded. So again, you may be giving your feedback right on the sheet of paper that the students did their work, or you are giving a separate piece of paper with the rubric, with some narrative written addressed to the student. Or you can actually record this on video where you're interacting with the student. Hey, Billy, here is your work. Let's look at all the great things you did, and let's look at some of the things that you may need to improve upon. You need to submit your evaluation rubric. We say rubric, it could be an answer key, but really the rubric is our preferred evaluation criteria that people should put in. And lastly, commentary, and that's the written part. As far as the work, think about, is true or false, 10 questions of true or false. That's an assessment, but is that something you want to submit? 5 questions of multiple choice. Is that something you want to submit? Think about the choices. Now, in a lesson that's 3 to 5, in a lesson segment that's 3 to 5 lessons, you may have several to choose from. If you're going with, let's say, just a 3-day lesson, that may give you less options. So you really need to think about how you design that piece of evidence. And it's not critical that all the students do well, and it's actually better that you have a variety of students struggling, and because you want something to write about. If all the students got 100, then there's really not much to write about. So think about the assessment choices that you have to choose from while you're planning your task in task 1.
Just to add to that, one of the things that you all will also see as a requirement for task 3 is the fact that one of the students have to have an IEP. So just to reiterate, it's really important that the students have a variety of ability, because especially they do not want you to just choose the highest achieving students in your classroom. Thank you so much, especially for those of you who have attended all 3 of our sessions this week. We appreciate you coming back and being participants. Please, we ask that you visit our website for more information, especially since we provide free consultations for people who may have questions. Follow us on Instagram. We usually post a lot of deals, and we're working on being better about videos. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the reason is that all of the videos from the sessions this week for task 1, 2, and 3 will be posted on our YouTube channel, so that you can go back to it and review. The other thing is that we will be sending out an email to all of you by Monday, because we are going to do a part 2 to this. So we consider this Conquer the edTPA to be our level 1 course, and then we have a level 2 course. And in the level 2 course, you actually get some feedback on your writing. So level 2 is definitely for people who have started writing, started drafting, and want to get some feedback and do some drafting with people. And those sessions are going to be way smaller. So please look out for that information if it's something that you would be interested in.